Before we get into this video more, I wanted to thank everybody who has subscribed to the channel. I recently hit the 5,000 subscriber mark, which it means a lot to me. And as a result, I am going to schedule a live stream for October 11th at 1 p.m. That's a Saturday afternoon, at least here in Tucson. So that would be Mountain Standard Time, Saturday, October 11th at 1 p.m. I try to do a live stream every time I reach 1,000 subscribers, which takes about 6 months for this channel so far. And that way you can, type in questions and I can try to answer them or just share your thoughts. And usually they've been kind of fun for the people that join them. So once again, this announcement will replay at the beginning of the next, I think, 3 videos until the 11th rolls around at 1 p.m. So hopefully you'll be able to join us. I appreciate you stopping by to check out yet another episode of Vintage Audio Review. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about this guy here, the CARY SLP98 tube preamplifier. This is a 2-piece unit. The power supply is over here. And it has a fairly long cord. I'm thinking it's 4 to 5 feet long, so you can place the power supply away from the main unit if you so desire. This particular unit is a friend of mine who gave it to me to review. It turns out it was manufactured in 1997. I actually called CARY up and they were nice enough to provide me with the manufacturing date based upon the serial number. They sold these in 1997 for around $3,800 or about $7,500 today. They are still being sold in 2025, and I did a quick check on the website and they were on sale for around $3,300 today. So they came down in price if you want to look at it that way. They look pretty much the same, maybe cosmetically a little bit different. Maybe they changed some tubes and some circuit designs, but it's still known as the SLP98. It does have a phono stage for moving magnet cartridges in it. And what I will do is show the, a closer view of the front, the back, the power supply, and then I'll pop the cover on the bottom side of the unit and we'll take a peek in there. It does look to me like this unit has been worked on. Maybe it was a mod, maybe it was repair. It looks like they did a good job, but to me it doesn't look like it was probably original from 1997. I'm sure the tubes aren't original from that date either, but we will see how it performs overall on the bench. Now, as with most of the CARY gear I've seen, there are very few electrical specs. It lists an SNR, and it does list the input sensitivity for the unit, and that's really about it other than the weight and tubes. And it is a Class A triode design, they say. So we'll look at how it performs on the bench, and then I will tell you what I thought after listening to it and using it. Here's a close-up view of the CARY SLP98. Starting on the left, we have our power switch totally off, and then we have a standby position, which I think just keeps the filament currents on. And then we have the operate position for when you actually want to use it. We have our inputs here, and we do have a phono input. It's for a moving magnet cartridge. We have a mute position and an operate position. Normally you would be in the operate position. Then we have this tape and monitor position switch, and I don't know if this switch was reversed because it's operating differently than I would think, but for normal use you would have it on the tape position, so any of these inputs will come out. You have your main volume control, and then you have input levels or balance controls for each channel, which is kind of nice. This is the power supply for the SLP98 as well. Coming around back, you can see that we have all of our inputs and outputs here. There's actually 2 outputs for the preamp out, which is nice. And everything's gold plated, as you can see, and they're kind of color coded with the white and red. You have your input for the power supply, which would be the other end of this cord here. And these guys are not hot. They're actually at ground level, these collectors of these transistors here. And you can kind of just see how nicely everything is laid out. We do have a ground terminal there as well for the phono input. This is a view looking down from the top, kind of just showing you how the tubes are laid out and all that. And when you remove the bottom cover off and look at it, you can see how nicely this is put together. I don't know if this is all original. I am thinking it's not, but anyway, this is what it looks like today. Right now we're looking at our standard THD SNR plot at 1 kHz with a 2 volt RMS signal going into the auxiliary input, in this case on the SLP98P. And the only specification given by CARY is that the SNR should be better than 88 dB, and indeed it is at 96 dB and some change. Now, I should point out that I do have the input levels, the left and right input levels, set for about their maximum gain or minimum attenuation, I guess you would say. I tweaked them each a little bit so that I could get 0 dB of gain pretty much out when I adjusted the master volume control. So it's looking pretty decent, other than the THD plus noise is not so great, particularly for the right channel. And you can see this second harmonic is a lot higher than the left channel second harmonic. Speaking of harmonics, here's what they look like. And this is a plot showing the harmonics, and you could see that indeed the second or even harmonics are higher than the third or odd harmonics. And you can also see how the right channel is about 10 dB higher, almost maybe 9 dB higher than the left channel as far as that second harmonic. I did find one specification, and that is that with a 110 millivolt input, you should be able to get 1 volt at the output, showing a 20 dB gain. Well, I've got the volume controls and the left and right channel input controls set for their maximum, where we can get the maximum gain. So we're about 8.5 dB shy of that 20 dB, plus we're about half of the voltage, actually a lot less than that. We're at, what, 400 millivolts, and it's saying that we should be at about 1 volt output. So I don't know if there's any internal tweakings, but this is not meeting that requirement. Right now I've got a 2 volt RMS 1 kilohertz signal going into the auxiliary input, and I've adjusted the gain from 0 dB to almost 8, we'll just say 8 dB. You can see our distortion for the left channel went up quite a bit, and the right channel probably doubled from where it was at 0 dB gain. I do have the left and right input controls still set so that they're pretty well balanced. They're almost at the maximum gain state or minimum attenuation, I guess, depending on how you look at it. And our SNR looks really good. THD plus noise isn't stellar by any means, and overall the THD is not bad. We're at almost 5 volts out, and I'm going to increase it a little bit more till something gets a lot worse. It could be this or it could be this. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the volume control to give us some more gain. So we're at a little bit over 10 dB of gain and getting about 6.8 volts out. SNR still looks good. THD really hasn't changed that much. I think I can go up just a little bit more, and that would be at the max. So we're at 0.5% THD for the right channel. The left channel is looking at about 0.3%. SNR's 104 dB, but our THD plus noise is, we'll call it between minus 46 to minus 51 dB. And we could get 11 dB of gain out of this, and we could get up to 7.5 volts out if you so chose to run it at max volume with a 2 volt RMS input signal. Right now we're looking at the frequency response from 10 Hertz to 40 kilohertz with a 2 volt RMS signal going into the auxiliary input. And once again, the gain is set for 0 dB of gain. There is no specification for it, but this guy looks really, really good. I mean, at 20 kilohertz, we're down 1/10 of a dB and only 0.3 of a dB at 40 kilohertz, and it's flat down to 10 hertz. So this thing looks outstanding as far as its frequency response. Right now I've selected the tuner inputs, and those inputs are terminated into short, so we're just looking at the system noise of the SLP98. The volume and input controls are still set for 0 dB of gain. There is no specification for the system noise, but it is, we'll call it minus 100 dBV. So it's pretty quiet. We got power supply kind of stuff going on here, but overall this should be a very quiet preamplifier. Here's the SLP98P's multitone response. There is no specification for it, but if you do the calculations, you're getting between about 12 to 14 bits of distortion free range. Right now I'm going to look at the input to input isolation. In this case, the two inputs that I'm using are the auxiliary input, which has the 2 volt RMS signal going in, and right now it's sweeping from 10 Hertz to 40 kilohertz. And then what I'm going to do is switch over to the tuner input, which has shorts on it. So what we're going to see is the leakage from the auxiliary input over to the tuner input, and you would want that to be as negative as you can get. There is no specification from it, of course. CARY wasn't very big with specifications on this. So let's see what happens when I switch over to the tuner input. Okay, I've switched over to the tuner input, and our worst case isolation is about we'll say minus 70. So we're about 70 dB of isolation here at 40 kilohertz. At 20 kilohertz, it's a bit better, maybe 75 dB of isolation. And overall, that's probably pretty good. Here we have the SLP98's crosstalk from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. The volume and input controls are still set for 0 dB of gain. And I ran it from minus 15 dBV to plus 6 dBV. Normally I would only run the crosstalk at 0 dBV or 6 dBV, but it went the whole gamut here. And basically what it tells us is that our worst case crosstalk is about 50 dB, maybe 52 dB. And then it's better from there. And that, of course, is at 20 hertz. Once again, there was no specification given by CARY for their crosstalk. Here we have the SLP98's THD versus frequency and input signal level with the volume control set for 0 dB gain. And the frequency range is from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Once again, CARY provided no specs about the THD, but at our highest input signal level of 6 dBV or about 2 volts RMS, we are, we'll call it a tad over 0.1% THD all across the band. Right now I have a 1 kilohertz 5 millivolt signal going into the phono input of the SLP98P, and we are measuring at the tape output. You can see we've got a lot of gain, probably we'll call it 44 dB of gain, and our THD is not bad. SNR's 39 to 42 dB, and the THD plus noise is not looking real stellar from a standpoint of a phono stage, and a lot of that's caused by this 60 hertz and then 180 hertz power supply stuff coming through. So it is what it is. If I turn on the RIAA weighting, it will improve things a bit. The SNR's got a bit better, and the THD plus noise got a bit better. So it is performing a little bit better if you apply that weighting. And of course, there is no specification other than the RIAA tracking, which we will see in just a minute when we look at the frequency response. Right now, we're looking at the frequency response of the phono section from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz with a 5 millivolt signal applied to the left and right phono inputs. I'm measuring at the tape output, and the specification that I got was really kind of weird, so I'm not going to even give it, but it doesn't look real great until you get to maybe about 50 hertz or so, and then we're down probably half a dB, which isn't so bad, and then we're at worst case maybe a half a dB on the plus side of the frequency response, and overall the channels are balanced to within about 0.4 of a dB. So I don't know if they had a low cut filter built into the phono section, but you know, really you probably aren't going to get a lot of response below 50 hertz anyway through a lot of systems. Maybe certain ones you would with a subwoofer and all that, but with this particular phono section, and maybe there's something going on with it that might need tweaking or something, I would say it will be hard to get that great Canon effect from the War of 1812. As far as this particular SLP98's performance on the bench, I thought it had an outstanding frequency response, basically only down a couple tenths of a dB at 40 kilohertz and pretty well flat other than that. And what I also liked about it was that you can adjust the input levels, basically balance control individually for each channel, which makes it a lot easier for me to do measurements on it to get those channels balanced, and I think that is a nice feature. And then you have your regular volume control, so you can kind of tweak your left and right signals and then use the master volume control from there. And I think that way of doing things is pretty nice. It has several line level inputs, a phono input, a tape monitor loop. So overall, I think it has a fair amount of features. I think it's fairly compact. It has a nice look, and I like the finish of it. Overall, I thought it did pretty good ergonomically, and just using it. Now, the SNRs were, I think, decent for most of the range. I think this particular unit performed better than the spec that was given in the literature. And the thing that was given in the literature that it didn't meet was the input signal level for a auxiliary input signal. At a certain level you wanted to get so much of a gain, and it didn't get there. It probably got about halfway to what the gain was. So maybe there's some modification somebody used to so it didn't have so much gain. I don't know, but it has plenty of gain for driving whatever amplifier you're going to drive with it. And it's a nice looking unit overall. I just kind of like the way it looked. I like the toggle switches up front as well, and just kind of the ergonomics I thought were very good. So as far as all that, it's a nice unit. For my listening tests, I connected it to a Bryson 2B LP amplifier, which was connected to my venerable Wilson Watt 3 Puppy 2 loudspeakers, and I decided I wanted to do an A/B test with this and my standby Carver C1 preamplifier. It's a solid state unit if you're not familiar with it. Probably a bit older than this, although the caps in the Carver had been replaced. But I was just curious to see if I would hear a difference in the sound between the two once I adjusted their levels and all that for the test. And I will just first let me say this thing just sounds fine. It's quiet. I thought it reproduced the music nicely. I have no complaints at all about the sound, and that's good. I don't think it added or subtracted anything. And when I did an A/B with the Carver C1, well, no difference at all between the two. It was just me, and I listened to music for quite a while and a bunch of different music, and the only time I heard a difference between the two was when I turned on the sonicalography on the C1, and then it just sounded better. So, go figure. I should mention that when I was doing my A/B listening test between the two preamplifiers, I did it at two different listening levels. Most of it was done at a lower level, which was probably in the mid 70 dB SPL levels. And when I went up to a louder listening level, which was probably in the 82 dB SPL listening area, I had to readjust both of the volume controls, and I make sure that they're matched when I did that. And at the higher volume level or the lower volume level, I didn't hear any difference between the two preamps until I switched in the C1's sonicalography, and then to me that just sounded much better between the two, but it's kind of like cheating. So anyway, as far as a preamp, I would say if you're in the mood for a two preamplifier and you want something that doesn't have tone controls and is fairly well equipped, the CARY SLP98 would be a good option. So once again, that's kind of my take on the SLP98 tube preamplifier. As always, if you have not subscribed to the channel, I hope you will take a moment to do so to help the channel grow. I'm always interested to seeing your comments and questions and criticisms, as there may be, in the comment area. And of course, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. It helps with YouTube's algorithm. So I hope you will do that as well. And as always, until next time, I hope you have a great day or night.